Do you ever wonder what it really means to be human? That beyond the routines, the masks, and the daily hustle, there's a raw, messy, and beautiful reality unfolding right before our eyes. I'm Rick Watson, and this is Humaning, a podcast where I have honest conversations with everyday humans, and together we peel back the layers, dive into the chaos, and celebrate the magic of just being human. As you listen, notice how different parts of your story may appear in the story of others as we all just do our best to live, to feel, and to connect. Welcome to Humaning. Hey, it's Rick here. Thanks for hanging out. Um, welcome to the starting line. Welcome to the starting line of this new podcast. I thought I'd just jump on today quickly before the actual episodes start, just to give you a bit of context around what and why and who and all the stuff that will give a bit of background around this new experiment. And I think it's interesting. I very much have my podcast training wheels on, so there's I'm I'm going to be learning in real time, including right now. So hopefully this is the shittest episode, and they will just get amazing from here as I get better with practice. But without the camera on, I actually feel pretty comfortable just with audio, so it should be okay. So why? I guess I had the idea for this podcast about 4 years ago, when I was recovering from some health stuff. I kind of wanted a little project to lean into, but the conditions and the support and even my mental health and just wasn't great. So now feels like a much more supported, structured, ready time. And I think the key part of that is I really, even back then, like 4 years ago, the idea was I just want to have interesting conversations with everyday people. And that part is what's carried through the whole time. I just have this belief that every person's got a novel in them. Every person's got an interesting story, and that's the essential piece, the essential part of this humaning podcast is to find the gold in every person's story. And I think it's probably changed a little bit for me as well. Like I spent 25 years in the fitness industry. In the last probably 4 or 5 years, I've swung around to be doing more work in the mental, emotional realms, coaching men's circles, and I'm in the process of studying to be a psychotherapist. So in all of that, I've really learnt the value of conversation and dialogue. And I've really learnt that it can be a really amazing gateway to lots of different things, really. it can be a gateway to some realizations about getting to know yourself better, how you show up in the world, how you get in your own way. So many different things come from this dialogue as it expands your awareness. So I guess at the purest level, that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. I think it's important to mention that what I'm not trying to do is this sounds weird. I'm not trying to make money from this. I'm not trying to promote anything. I'm not trying to have a bigger platform or any of that shit. That shit drives me wild. I don't like it. I get that it's a necessary part of life, but this is not it. The goal of this is to have rich conversations with everyday humans. And really, it's because I love them. I get so much from having these conversations. It's a big part of my work. It's a big part of who I am as a regular human. And yeah, so the first thing that I think this podcast is really about is like it's a gift that I'm giving to myself. Um, even just saying that out loud sounds a bit, I don't know, selfish. Uh, yeah, but that's all old stories. So I'm okay that it's okay to give myself something that I really love doing. So yeah, so that's the first part of it is I'm giving myself the gift of good conversations. Um, yeah, I think the second part is giving my guests the opportunity to have a conversation that they may have previously not had in the past. For them to share parts of their story or learn something about themselves or, join the dots on something. So, look, be really clear that these sessions are definitely not therapy. They're definitely not coaching. They're definitely not any realm of a men's circle or anything like that. They're just conversations. It's really important, similar to the podcast. I don't have an agenda. I don't have an outcome. I don't have a list of questions. This thing's going to be freestyle. And I think there's some real freedom in that. And I'm learning as I go that the agendas, the plans, the structure, for me personally, can be really suffocating. Um, and I like the idea of being in relationship and being in conversation, being in connection, and just seeing what fucking emerges. um, there's a little bit of fear in that, but to be honest, that excites the shit out of me. And yeah, so there's not going to be a formula for this podcast. There's each week will be different, or each fortnight. That's probably the rate that I'll get them out. So first thing, it's a gift to myself. Second thing, it's a gift to my guests, and then the third thing, it's a gift to you. Um, yeah, I personally get a lot out of listening to other people's stories. Like an example is if I'm in a weekly men's circle, I run one, and I just hearing other men share. Especially when there's parts of my story in their story, and I just find that is a way to connect with myself that doesn't involve anything other than listening. So, yeah, if I've got one hope, it doesn't quite fit under the topic of agenda, but if I've got one hope, it's that you get to see some of your story in the story of others as they slowly come out. And I think, yeah, there's some real beauty in that, and there's some real simplicity in that, and yeah, it's cool. So they're the three things: gift to myself, gift to the guest, and a gift to you, the listener, to get whatever you get from listening. And I'm not gonna pretend I know what that's gonna be. Uh, but yeah, I'm super interested to find out. Um, what is humaning? That's a really interesting one. I kind of came up with this by mistake, and then I realized that it's actually a term. I was just talking to someone in a session, in a coaching session, just around the fact that I just love humaning. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah, just this, like sharing our humanness, our being human, and our humility, or all of it. And so that kind of stuck with me, that little conversation. And then I was thinking about the podcast and like, humaning. And then I chucked it into Google originally and realized that it's actually a term. And then I went to my good friend Chat GPT and I asked her. Yes, my version is a her. And so I'm gonna read out what she told me what humaning is, and then I'll give you her version, then I'll give you my version. Hopefully there's some sort of reasoning for this. Humaning is the act of embracing and engaging with a full range of human experiences and emotions. It involves being authentic, expressing emotions, making mistakes, learning, growing, and connecting with others on a genuine level. And yes, I get the irony that I'm asking a computer to define humaning. My son, my 15-year-old now, he pointed that out to me. But that's the online version of the definition of humaning, and it's just all about embracing the full range of our human experience. And I'm fucking here for it. I think part of my human experience is getting to a stage where I realize that this is what feels meaningful for me. This is what I love. This is what I love doing. And also realizing that not everyone feels the same way, and that's okay. If you don't like humans, then this is probably not the podcast for you. But yeah, so I think that's the AI definition. I think my definition is maybe not as eloquent because I haven't got the amazing words of ChatGPT. My definition is that, we have a river or a current running through us all day, every day, all night. But when we're awake, we have this current running through us, and it's our sensations, our mental stories, our emotions, and they just rip through under the surface based on what's happening in our environment, what's happening in our mind, what's happening in our life, who we're relating with, circumstances, conditions, all the field stuff. So many of us can and do go through life without dipping their toe into that current and seeing what's going on. And I get why that's the case. There's lots of different reasons why that's appropriate. But for me, humaning is actually dipping your toe into that and seeing what's alive emotionally, what's happening in my body, what's happening in my mental stories, my beliefs, as I interact with the world. That, to me, feels like humaning, and not in a way where you have to be fully self-revealing at all times. It's more so like starting with you. It's like, can I check in? Can I check in and see what's happening for me right now? So, can you check in and see what's happening for you right now? Like, how is your body feeling? What are the mental stories running through? It's like, is this guy ever going to shut up? Or this is great? And what emotions are floating around? So for me, if I jump into the role, for me right now, my body feels pretty relaxed. I'm a little bit tight in the chest and the throat because this is a new experience to be recording audio and to be speaking like this. Mentally, I'm feeling pretty clear. And emotionally, I think there's actually a little bit of relief in there. The last couple of days, I know I was going to record this, and there's been some anxiety around doing a good job. So I can actually feel that anxiety dissipate, and there's filling up with more relief. So that's just, to me, that's checking in. It's dipping your toe into the current of what's alive for you right now. I actually think that process has some fucking superpowers, and it's completely underrated. And at the same time, I get how scary it can be sometimes when there's turbulence and we dip our toe into the turbulent waters. Often it's easier to start when things are calm and manageable, and that's okay too. But yeah, I guess that analogy is really what this podcast is all about. We're just dipping our toe into the current of human experience, getting real-time stories from real humans, and seeing where they take us. I guess the other part that I wanted to mention before I wrapped up today was just to talk about the 3 layers of conversation. I'm not sure, you may have heard of this before, but there's kind of 3 layers of conversation. The first one's factual, and that's kind of our small talk. How's the weather? The second one is personal, and that's more about dipping into that affect of what's alive for us right now, our feelings, our thoughts. And then the last one is relational, and that's responding in relation to someone in real time as they're conversing, giving feedback, sharing your experience. And yeah, so there's those 3 layers of factual, personal, and relational. And humaning this podcast, humaning in general, but specifically this podcast, is more in the personal and relational, in the bottom two. But I wanted to give some context on that because this hasn't been a part of my life all the way through, and I guess I just wanted to paint a bit of a picture that if you've found yourself growing up in a world that was more factual and not as much personal and relational, that was me. Hi, Mum, I love you. But in our house, we kind of mainly had factual conversations. There wasn't a lot of personal, wasn't a lot of relational. It's just how it was. And that kind of continued on in my marriage. 15 years of mostly factual, not a little bit of personal, a little bit of relational, but very rarely. So we continued on what was modeled to us. And I guess from those two experiences, I've realized that me personally, I really benefit from the personal and relational type of dialogue. I get a lot out of it. I get a lot of connection. I get a lot of meaning. I like that realm of conversation, but it definitely wasn't something that I just was great at. And still struggle in various aspects. So I just wanted to bring that up just to paint a picture that it really doesn't matter where you're starting from, what the conditions were when you grew up, what you've been taught, what you modeled to your kids, like all of that. We're all coming from different starting points. And I think at the core of it, it really speaks to what this podcast is about. And it's about connection, connecting with ourselves and having the courage and the curiosity and maybe even a little bit of confidence to share that with someone else. And to share that without an agenda, without a hidden meaning. That's at the core of what humaning is for me. And yeah, I really look forward to having conversations with lots of different people. I've got a cool collection of about 30 or 40 people that I've shortlisted. I'm not sure all of them will want to come on, but yeah, I've just got some interesting humans that have interesting stories, and that I know they're relatively comfortable hanging out in the personal and relational realms of conversation. So yeah, I think that's where I'll end it. Thank you for taking the time to hang out and just listen to this first official foray into the podcasting world. Yeah, it feels good to have you along for the ride and to be here from the start. So thank you. And yeah, go and jump straight into the first official episode. I'll see you in there. And the plan is to get them out fortnightly as a minimum, and then if I add some extra ones on top of that, I will. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for connecting, and we'll speak to you soon.